We are obsessed with being our best selves and awash in the language of self-help and self-improvement. But is our cultural fixation on health and wellness actually making us worse? Is it keeping us from being fully human? Welcome to the Virtual Jewel Box, podcast of the Tanner Humanities Center. I'm Scott Black, Director of the Tanner Humanities Center, and today I am delighted to welcome Kate Bowler in conversation with Gretchen Case about our culture of toxic positivity and how to be an authentic human being. Dr. Bowler is Associate Professor of American Religious History at the Duke Divinity School. She is author of Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved, No Cure for Being Human and Other Truths I Need to Hear, and Have a Beautiful, Terrible Day, Daily Meditations for the Ups, Downs, and In-Betweens. Dr. Case is Director of the Center for Health, Ethics, Arts, and Humanities at the University of Utah. She is Associate Professor in the Department of Theater and an Adjunct Associate Professor in the Department of Internal Medicine.
So we're already recording, and this is for the Tanner Humanities Center for the whole university. And I sent some questions and things ahead of time, but I thought we would talk today about authenticity. I think it's on the minds of a lot of people. It's something that you deal with a lot. There is a reason for hope in authenticity, and I'm always just looking for reasons for hope and the ways to look for it and stuff like that.
Goodness, authenticity is the perfect topic for right now.
Well, can I start with can I ask you a fun question to start? What do your friends say about you? Because a lot of people want to be your friend. Who's the authentic Kate? How do your friends describe you?
So I think my friends would say that that I will die of empathy-related causes, like for sure. That I am slightly more evil than I seem, which I think is entirely accurate. I saw my husband gardening the other day and he picked up petunias and then had a back spasm and fell over, and it sort of looked like he was dying of a heart attack. And instead of rushing out to help him, I cried. I was laughing so hard. So that feels like more accurate to my true self. But I think what's so funny about your friends knowing you is they can always see that little sort of film that separates the person that we want to be and then the person that we are at 2 a.m. And what a joy and terrible hypocrisy to have people see us up close.
Yeah, and what an honor to have people who stick with you when they see who you really are. Okay, so that's a little bit about saying just being authentic. But a lot of people who will be listening to this will be academics. How do you, and I mean you and one in the universe, stay authentic as an academic? Like, how do you perform that academic life, have the intellectual rigor, still be a person? And for you, that's what helps you reach thousands of people because people see you as authentic. So what's in there? What's in them?
I think so often our culture imagines authenticity as some kind of approximation of be who you are, and that Hamlet's Polonius's "to thine own self be true" has been a modern obsession. Like, how do we get to that really real self? And I think for academics in particular, we are constantly struggling with what is our process of becoming? Not just the classically liberal view of dig inside and you'll find something good. I'll tell you, Gretchen, I do not share that view. I think that what is probably deep inside of me is song lyrics, insecurity, concern about whether I bought dinner. But one of the things I really love about the experience of the academic life is it forces us to structure into our habits a means of becoming, so that we're not simply a sum total of what we already are and we need to excavate it. We are ideally trying to quarry into something deeper than ourselves. And I have found that to be one of the even most convenient ways of trying to structure my life is I can set a book project in front of myself and say but then who do I want to be based on the question, how will I come to know myself better and how will I come to know a topic more deeply? And the fact that we get to quarry so deep into one weird topic is our special niche magical, I think, superhighway into greater self-knowledge.
And you brought up like that the topic might be important because that was one of my questions. Is it about the subject? But I want to give a shout out to religious studies here because you're a religious studies person, and I feel like, and I think I put this in the questions I sent you, but like religion is about authenticity, like
Yes.
how you approach religion, how you approach spirituality, how you approach questions about yourself. Belief doesn't work without authenticity. So
Yeah. Yes.
what is it about you studying religion and aspects of the spiritual that helps you feel authentic? And like here, religious studies is under
Mhm.
the College of Humanities, and you're at a divinity school. And do those structural things matter as well? I just put a lot in there. So
No, I love it because I really don't think religion can be studied effectively if it's not intersecting directly with the humanities. And I think that's one of the privileges of religious studies is it touches on history and sociology and economics and psychology. And so having that interdisciplinarity is entirely unavoidable, which is nice. I think too what helps what I find especially attractive about that approach is that we sometimes think of ourselves culturally, like broadly, as just homo economicus. Like our duty is to produce capital, it's to grow in metrics and in impact. And, and even we do this to ourselves, not just like, oh, I need to produce another book, but we we have so often absorbed that kind of vocational language from the culture and imagined that all of our lives have to be producing purpose-driven, obsessive, singularly focused, and that messaging comes to us so early in life from the first time people are like, "Do you like soccer? Do you wanna make soccer your all-consuming life passion?" And then some of us started doing that with our jobs where we're like, "Do you like the Elizabethan court? Is that now officially your personality?"
that would be
So I think maybe for academics in particular, or people who are intersecting with humanities and the religious studies, like we get to think more about how authenticity can directly address this sort of problem, that we are more than these economic engines, we're more than robots for growth. We get to talk about religion and humanities as implicitly recognizing the multiple layers in which we intersect mind, body, spirit. And then we get to turn it onto real theories about what we think happens. Like the goodness of our creation. What is hope? What is death? Do we think that salvation is something that comes from outside of ourselves? Like we get we get deep fast when we start treading in those waters.
yeah, yeah. Well, so staying with intersections with humanities, but moving into healthcare and medicine, which is a lot of what I do. Um, so this question keeps coming up, and I'm sure you've answered it a million times, but well, first of all, humanities and humane and human all get mixed together, right? When we talk about medicine, but humanities is the study of what it is to be human.
Yes.
What special insights do you have from your your individual story about it always comes down to like what should they know? What should healthcare workers in training know? What should they know now about like the human experience? What do you wish they had known about your human
Yeah.
experience of being so sick?
I think one of the first things I noticed when I was started experiencing like that much precarity is that I was so very afraid and so very fearful that pain would separate me from everyone else. And I found that primarily the language that was spoken to me was not that sort of lovely humanities, human focus kind of like even like vocabulary or framing. What normally comes back at you is outcomes language or probabilities, or it's a language that's scientifically based that starts to sound a lot like people are just gauging certainty at you.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that I really love so much about people who spent a long time with people who are sick, um, so that's always like the lovely chaplains and nurses and the very human doctors and all those. When they're able to lay aside outcomes language and just remember that somebody who's very sick or somebody who's dying is still somebody who's living. They're somebody who is trying to find purpose. They're trying to find meaning. They're trying to find their own way of being a human through a system that now feels like they will be squeezed into a structure in which they might not necessarily survive. It's always a shame when people use words like soft skills, as if like empathy is not rigorous, as if
Mhm.
careful listening is not somehow like both art and poetry, and frankly one of the best ways to get better diagnoses. So
Yeah.
I think so many of those beautiful heart forward combinations between the way people talk to you and the way people experience their own vocation as a healthcare provider has been like one of the things I hope we all get to do together in this new era of medicine.
And what would you say to someone who says, "Well, my authentic self as a provider, a physician or a nurse is to give the certainty of diagnosis, to give the,
Yeah.
the statistics, to that science language feels authentic to me." How can you how would you pull at that and say
Mhm.
there might be more?
Well, I think that's what's been so exciting to see in the real like flourishing of the field of palliative care is they've really understood how science informed language actually interacts with how people hear. You can use the language all day long, but I think the question is like, is it effectively helping your patient make informed choices about what's next? And what's so lovely about the way palliative care frames like just something really simple, like the intersection between meaning and metrics has never been clearer to me than when people come in with their pain scale. On a scale from 1 to 10, are you a 4? Are you a 6? That's a perfect example of science language meets or a desire for precision meets the blurriness of emotions of our us in our little meat suits. And
Mhm.
I think one of the things we should always be asking ourselves is our language more and more attuned to matching people's experience of that language? And can I shape my language more directly to help people live inside the categories that they know? And because I would just venture to say that most of the outcome language, most of the science certainty language is actually not language that's framed in quote their authentic experience. It's language that lawyers have developed to help people navigate, like, how you set expectations with patients. And I mean, I know that I've had the phrase standard of care used at me so many times that we both didn't know what we were talking about.
It's also very safe language, though, when people because I think where the authenticity comes in is, people wanting to be good at their job,
Yes.
and to use language like standard of care or to rely on statistics, that's safe, that gets away from the terrible, wonderful uncertainty that is humans
Yeah.
taking care of humans. Yeah.
Well, and I don't mean to be just blindly optimistic about certain aspects of AI, but we know that doctors have been dramatically overburdened for the last 15 years in particular about what a desire for metrics and a desire to take elaborate notes and put things into systems has done to doctors. It's allowed them almost no humanity whatsoever. And now with these note taking devices, I do think that it's allowing doctors to be able to have a little more breathing room even within their scheduled visits to be able to encounter a person. So I do feel like we've got some technological solutions along the way that can help doctors be more people facing.
Yeah. Well, since you brought up, like, you want to be optimistic, but not overly optimistic, but you are very optimistic. Well, one of the questions I was asked to ask you is, how do you have so much capacity for joy? Where does that where do you get that? And is that from your, I'm quoting, but it's like second chance at life, this new chance at life. Is it all from that? And do you ever struggle? Like, how are you so happy?
I guess to be honest, I don't really believe much in the category of happiness as a durable steady state, like a place you're supposed to get to and stay. I just don't think that most of us are lucky enough to be able to stay positive, stay happy, stay in some kind of like lovely, contained, blissful place. And so I've really started to put so much weight on the gift of joy that like joy to me is both a gift, a thing that happens from outside of you, and it's also I've taken it on as kind of a job. Like how do I put myself in the way of joy Because otherwise, in a day that's or week or month that's full of things I didn't choose, like joy, I might miss joy altogether. So I do think that being very unlucky, like having all kinds of terrible things happen to me, has made me like very, very stubborn about joy. Because it's, oddly, that Nietzsche challenge in the spoke Zarathustra quote where it says, like, have you ever said yes to one joy? And then there's this litany that comes after, like, well, then you have to say yes. Like, you have to say yes to all the pain, all the suffering, all the. And so I do feel like being joyful is about turning toward your life and just practicing saying yes. Because a lot of the time, the yes you get to say is an incredible surprise of like delight and gratitude and a weird feeling of love. So yeah, I'm trying to be more joyful. I want to stand there like I'm putting myself in traffic.
Is the traffic joy, or
The traffic is probably a bad thing, but also, but joy's in there somewhere. It's the clown car.
And do you want to be hit by it, or
I'd like to be struck directly by that clown car. You got it.
just working through the metaphor?
Yeah, exactly.
So can I talk to you a little bit about your social media presence and how much you're
Sure.
out there, not just in your books, but on Instagram, online? So Utah has a lot of social media influencers. We have a lot of online people. And people are, in general, not just in Utah, interested in looking at other people's lives. And I think that is a kind of, to go back to our theme, a search for authenticity, like
Yes.
trying to find real life in this unreal life. But
Mhm.
how do you find your authenticity? How do you stay true to yourself when you have to frame yourself in particular ways on social media or in public?
Yeah. Well, because there's such a dark side to that parasocial nature of the attention economy. Because we see it everywhere, like loneliness at a high point. People are desperate for connection, and yet there's never been higher rates of people disconnected watching other people do things. So I think because of that, and just because of my own tendency to like doom scroll late at night, I'm just very aware that there's a couple necessary pieces to being an online person. One of them is a private necessity to be very, very careful about maintaining real life social connections, that you have to have as many in-person experiences as you have online, period. Because otherwise there's just too much outsourcing. I can, I've developed a lot of really wonderful relationships that I developed because of this online work. But then the temptation then is to imagine that there is a real life and it is somewhere outside of me that's happening. And so that is a terrible mistake I'm trying not to make. But I think the other one that I take very seriously is the responsibility to uh, portray an unshiny but reasonably polished version of really what I want to say. So, for example, I try really hard not to only pick flattering photos or to care that much about how I look. That's just like a rule I have because I would very much like to live in my actual human body. My actual human body is 180 pounds and, and does not look good from every angle. I'm just trying to be fine with that. But the other bit is I'm a professor and I'm so grateful to have the authority to have an expertise. And I would like to represent that honestly. So I try not to, for instance, do too many videos that are like in my kitchen. The truth is I'm like a pretty cool historian. So I try to do them at my job where I can represent my views in that way. Because I think hyper personalization, it is accidentally contributing to a decredentializing of our profession more broadly. And I want people to know and trust experts. So I want to represent myself fairly in that way.
Yeah, and that was actually one of my questions is I mean, I think it's settled whether or not academics can be on social media. And you started talking about this, but like, are we a special case? Because we need to present ourselves certain ways.
Well, I do think we should, but I do think we should. Like, I'm also just, we're both going to be quick to point out the gendered nature of this is going to be so much more tempting to take any woman with credentials and hyper personalize and want her only to be relatable and likable and not have a relationship to her expertise. Like it's just like It's one of the gifts of people finding women more easy to connect to, especially on Instagram.
Mm.
But my concern is that we now have a culture that in which higher education is under threat. They now don't know to trust us. So I do think for me, I do feel a responsibility to appear trustworthy and to speak in a manner that suggests that I have the benefit of an institution that has supported the ecology of my brain. And I want to, in brand words, I want to co-brand with my institution such that we all benefit from the fact that this is an institute of higher learning. Thank God.
Yeah, yeah. Has this gotten harder as you've grown more popular? Because you've gotten more popular, more people want to be your friend. That's
Well,
great.
that part I'm very happy with. I was very, very lonely before. So just having a community of people to have these conversations with, especially from an interdisciplinary perspective, man, I used to really only read history. And even just this week, I got a chance to interview great psychologists and like builders of social movements, and like that has been wonderful. But I I do think that we're in a crisis of they call them people who care about education. They will call us credentialists. And like I do think we're in a strange sort of populist miasma about what education means. So it does feel important to me to keep finding ways to remind people that institutions of higher education are for the people, and this is work for everyone. So that requires that we be accessible and also requires that we put on our expert hats.
So where do you think the future of humanities is and interdisciplinary work?
Yeah.
Within this big, like you said, miasma of what is going on with higher education, what ways do you see forward for
Mhm.
humanities and for interdisciplinarity in general?
Well, one of the wonderful bits about especially humanities facing projects is we're not simply trying to drill down on measurables. We're trying to existentially bear up against great mysteries, great philosophical questions, great questions in religious studies, some of the endless round robin of historical telos. Like, we never truly find the end of the source material because the questions itself are so deeply mysterious. This is the messy, unsolvable, unanswerable problems which made us go into these fields in the first place.
Mhm.
So I think the fact that these will be typically underfunded, they will be not necessarily respected, especially now that we are beginning to culturally absorb the normalization of cruelty. So the things that make us most deeply human, even if it feels mysterious and soft and unanswerable, I think will continue to be the most pressing questions of how do we be for other people a, a great and beautiful hope. The softer it gets, the weirder it gets. I think the more we need to double down.
And how can we encourage people to not be afraid of talking about things? Like, I think the more we feel the tension in the atmosphere, the less we wanna talk, like, the
Yes.
hot button topics feel like
Yeah,
lava hot, right? But
they do.
how do you say? Because to me, this is the moment that we lean in and say,
Yes.
"Push that button."
Well, I think I've always found this reassuring to just say like what's wonderful about leaning in right now is actually we have great language to describe what's happening. And I think people will feel more comforted, frankly, by knowing more than they think. I think people feel like, oh no, if I wade in, now I'm going to know things I can't unknow.
Right.
But I mean, we've got great categories for, say, the wild disconnect between forms of official civil religion right now and what we hope an authentic faith might be. That's great language. It's precise language. It all has a history. I think I think once people land on a category like civil religion, they will feel more and more at home in this thought world and more like they're participating and they get to co-create in their own lives this lovelier version of a society.
Do you do you have big thoughts on authenticity that you wanna share with us? Like, how do you, like, if I said define it right now, what is authenticity? Like,
Yeah.
especially authenticity in the academy. Like, what's your big picture authenticity?
Well, I do think that authenticity is a modern obsession with the performance of the self. And there is a separation between this deeper existential self and the performance thereof. And our hope is to live in alignment between the two. It's that great compliment that Abraham Lincoln's best friend told him. He said that Abraham Lincoln could play no part but his own. And I think that's what we're hoping to do, is to live in alignment with our deepest values and our deepest hope, knowing, of course, that the self is always a performance, but that we should worry too much about being asked to, like in the academy, so often we are asked to perform a kind of hyper certainty that deep down we're not even comfortable with. I think an authentic performance then is an emboldened version of your great intellectual gifts, and also the deep humility that we know and don't know simultaneously.
Yeah. My hope is always, when I say I don't know to a room full of students, that they take that as good and authentic. And sometimes they don't.
But what a compliment that you walked to the very edge of what you knew with them. And isn't that what we're really trying to do? I love that you said that.
I say it often. And I want it to be an invitation to say, like, well, there's more I need to learn. There's more you need to learn. We're not done here. Like, what we put on the exam is not it. And you learned it and we're done.
Yes.
But there's more that we both don't know.
I totally agree.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. And we loved having you here in Utah.
What a special community. I really genuinely had a fantastic time. Thank you so much for having me.
I cannot tell you how often someone had stopped me and said, you were on stage with her. She was wonderful.
Oh,
Like, what a gift. And so many people did not know what they were showing up for, which is my favorite. But really such good feedback, including from a lot of medical trainees, which makes me so happy. So
well, I was totally wowed. Thanks for having me.
You have been listening to the Virtual Jewel Box podcast of the Tanner Humanities Center. Our theme music is Jelly Roll Morton's Perfect Rag. Thanks for joining us.